Well, it has been another bruising week in federal parliament, and again the headlines seem to have been dominated by parliamentarians' behaviour rather than policy. Liberal Senator Michaelia Cash was forced to apologise following remarks about Bill Shorten's female staff members.
Meanwhile, Labor Senator Kim Carr also had to apologise and withdraw offensive remarks after he suggested that Liberal Senator James Paterson would have been part of the Hitler Youth movement. To discuss this and more, we're speaking now with Liberal MP Craig Kelly and Labor MP Pat Conroy. Thanks so much, both of you.
Well, just keep you at arm's length, okay?
yes.
No, Pat and myself, we get on very well, that's right.
So you say. Pat, I'll start with you. Do you think we've entered a new phase here? Of course, the personal has been used in the political sphere for a long time now, but is it becoming a little bit more vicious, or have we entered a new level now?
Oh, look, absolutely. What Senator Cash said was unprecedented. Let's just reflect on that. During Senate estimates, in a full glare of the public spotlight, she impugned the honour and integrity of every single female who works for Bill Shorten. And this just further discourages talented women from getting involved in politics.
I'll just stop you there. Let's just remind you of what was said.
If you want to start discussing staff matters, be very, very careful, because I'm happy to sit here and name every young woman in Mr Shorten's office over which rumours in this place abound. If you want to go down that path today, I will do it.
That's a nonsense.
And
well, do you want to start naming them? Do you want to start naming them for Mr Shorten to come out and deny any of the rumours that have been circulating this building now for many, many years?
And look, that was horribly offensive, and I should note she hasn't apologised. She's withdrawn the remarks, but that's not the same as apologising. And for the government to follow a fallacious line that somehow she was bullied into it, I watched the footage. I saw Senator Cameron questioning her. It was quite reasonable. It was quite civil. In fact, Michaelia Cash was making jokes with Doug until 2 minutes before this incident occurred. So it was just an outrageous attack.
Well, Craig, can you defend Michaelia Cash in this instance?
Oh, look, I'm not going to defend her, and there were, on both sides, I think, errors of judgment in some of the debating that we saw in Parliament this week, especially in Senate estimates. For Senator Carr, an experienced politician, to go back to what you wouldn't even see in university debating tactics, to make Nazi references against Senator Paterson.
Craig, we'll have a listen to what Senator Carr had to say.
Well, I can tell you that too. But you'd know that, those in the Hitler Youth would understand that only too well.
That's outrageous, Senator Carr. That is seriously offensive. I ask that you withdraw that.
I was being facetious.
No, it's not facetious, Senator Carr. Accusing someone of being a Nazi is a very serious thing.
I'll cut it out.
No, seriously, Senator Carr.
Senator Carr.
If you take offence, I withdraw it.
Or perhaps also underlines the sensitivity in Parliament at the moment too.
Look, also one thing I would say, these are Senate estimates, which is a little bit different to debating in the Senate chamber and the House of Representatives. Now, I think we try and have a rule, and I know Pat and myself, we disagree on many things. We argue across the chamber at each other, but we have a rule: you don't attack the person. You always play the ball and not the man, and I think that's what we need to really get back to. Also, not only in the chamber, but in Senate estimates as well.
Or in Michaelia Cash's instance, it was the staff that she went after, Bill Shorten's staff.
Yeah, look, we should have, I think there's been a lot of attacks from both sides. I think we should draw a line under this, and we should say, attacks on staff are off limits, and we should say, let's not attack each other personally. Let's get back and debate the issues that the public want to hear us talking about.
This almost runs contrary to what the Prime Minister put in place as far as, banning sexual relations, within the office. People seem to have taken it one step beyond that as far as the innuendo that's being levelled at each other and so on. Surely, what's the talk behind the scenes about where this is going?
Oh, look, it's a bit disappointing the way where it's going, but you have to remember there's tens of thousands of words said in Parliament every day. Someone wrote to me and said, when are you ever, talking or congratulating each other or agreeing? And I had two speeches this week. It was the member for Holt. I agreed with a speech that he was making. I complimented him. The member for Fowler, Chris Hayes, I complimented him on a speech. But none of this ever gets reported. We see of those tens of thousands of words, if there's two or three where there's someone stepped over the line, unfortunately that's what the media focuses on.
Craig, I agree with your sentiments about Parliament being a civil place and we're doing lots of good work together, but we shouldn't escape from the fact that Prime Minister Turnbull 2 weeks ago said he wanted to make Parliament and politics a more welcoming place for women to participate in. Then we had a senior female cabinet minister threatening that if people pursued quite legitimate questioning of her and her officer's behaviour, she would just drop a bucket of mud on all the females in Bill Shorten's office. That is incredibly horrible behaviour, and for there be no remonstration from the Prime Minister, he actually tried to defend Michaela Cash's behaviour in question time.
Pat, Peter Dutton said this week that the coalition was frustrated at the amount of lecturing coming from Labor. Is there too much moral lecturing going on on both sides?
Well, we were very careful. I think he was referring to the Barnaby Joyce incident. We were very careful with all our public utterances, including me on this program, to be reflecting about the use of taxpayers' money, to possible breaches of ministerial code of conduct. We were very clear that we weren't judging his personal life whatsoever, and I think most independent media commentary have agreed with that. It would be very silly and quite frankly wrong for politicians to reflect on the personal life of other politicians, because it's a slippery slope. But there has to be legitimate avenues for investigating the appropriate use of taxpayers' money. And it's a fine line, but I can say hand on heart that Labor's been on the right side of that line.
Craig, another issue, perhaps it was certainly not taking the main attention, nonetheless it was there, was the issue of entitlements. We've seen this before in Parliament, and a question over Julie Bishop and her partnership status. Her partner does accompany her at many official events, even at the UN he was with her, but yet technically he is not her partner. Just explain how this works.
Look, my understanding of the rules are that when you are travelling, you can actually have a nominee to travel with you. Now, I know many people with young kids can actually have like almost a nanny or a friend that comes with them to help look after the young child. And that's a nominee on your travel. As we're on your declaration, your partner, you need to also declare all their interests, what their assets are, what their investments are in certain companies. Now, there seems to be a bit of anomaly in those rules, so Julie was exactly right. She was working within the rules that are laid down. Now, perhaps those rules are something we need to look at, perhaps something we could do on a bipartisan basis without attacking each other and refine those rules.
She's under pressure though, isn't she? Undeniably. And would you say not a good look?
Oh, look, well, it's this goes both ways. We've seen in today's paper Bill Shorten keeping the Comcar waiting for a day, keeping the meter running while he's in the birdcage at the Melbourne Cup. So these things go both. There's two arguments to this. So I'd like to see with the rules as far as travel entitlements, perhaps that's something we might need to sit down between us and refine and get those a little bit more into public expectations.
Pat, should we have a bipartisan approach when it comes to MP entitlements?
Well, I think we need a uniform approach. I'm Deputy Chair of the House Privileges and Members' Interest Committee that has oversight of this, and I'd certainly welcome any opportunity to make the rules more consistent. And I think this particular incident doesn't pass the so-called pub test, which we shouldn't apply to all life, but quite frankly, if someone's a partner for the definition for travel and have an entitlement there, this isn't about looking after someone's young child. This is a partner travelling effectively.
But just because she's not married to her partner doesn't mean that necessarily the rules should be different. She said that she was acting within the rules because it was a nominated person.
What I'm saying is that person was travelling as her partner for travel. I would argue there should be the same definition of partner for members' interest declaration.
Well, in fact, Andrew Wilkie, the Independent of Tasmania, he has announced that he has a new partner and he's declared that he's been upfront about entitlements and so on.
So I'm prepared to accept Ms Bishop's assertion that she's operated within the rules. I'm not criticising whether she's breaking rules, but I just think we need to look at how those rules work, because you've got two different definitions of what a partner is, and I think Parliament needs to be transparent and we need to disclose the interests of our partners. Like, for example, Craig and I are both, you're married, aren't you, Craig? I've met your partner, and we've both disclosed our partners' financial dealings, where they work, what their shareholdings might have and everything else, because the people have a right to know what possible conflicts of interest MPs have, and I would argue that we need to make it a bit more consistent for non-married partners.
Yeah, because I mean, you'd be well aware of that perception among the public perhaps that politicians have their snouts in the trough.
Yeah, and this is why we have to perhaps look at these rules and tie up these loose ends so they're actually aligned with each other.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, we seem to have consistency on that.
There you go.
Let's turn to the Adani coal mine. Pat, what is Bill Shorten's policy on Adani?
Well, Labor's policy is that we respect the laws of the land. We're not about ripping up contracts. We're not about causing sovereign risk. We're deeply sceptical about the commercial viability and the environmental impact of the Adani mine. But ultimately, we'll look at it when we're in government, governed by the laws of that time. The federal government has two levers for a project like Adani. There's environmental approvals, which Adani has gone through, and financial levers around the $1 billion subsidy that the government wants to give them through the NAIF facility. We're deeply opposed to the $1 billion subsidy. That subsidy would threaten the 18,000 coal mining jobs in my Hunter region, and that's the reason I oppose it, is that it threatens jobs in my area if it gets this $1 billion subsidy. We've said if it's commercially stacks up, if it abides by the environmental laws of the land, then it should go ahead.
Do you concede, though, that Bill Shorten is treading a very fine line here? Because on the one hand, he's up in Townsville promising that, yes, you need jobs. Adani is providing jobs, or would. Yet down in Batman, when you've got the by-election and Labor versus the Greens, it's perhaps a very different story that's been portrayed.
Well, let's look at that jobs claim, for example. Adani, say, at best, they'll create 1,400 jobs, if you believe their own assertions, and it threatens 18,000 coal mining jobs in my community. So I think it being a net job gain for our country is very suspect. We've been consistent in saying it needs to follow all the environmental laws and be commercially viable. If it's not commercially viable, the government should not subsidise it and let it go ahead. Ultimately, but we're not in the position of the Greens. We're not going to rip up contracts and create massive sovereign risk. We'll be governed by the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, which Adani has approvals through. There are mechanisms if new information comes to light, or if Adani is shown to have falsified information on those applications. But at the moment, my understanding is it's consistent with the EPBC Act.
Craig, are the people in North Queensland right to be holding hope that Adani's going to provide lots of jobs? Because there is a question of exactly how many jobs are possible.
There'll be jobs in construction, there'll be jobs in the mine ongoing. But the real question is, Pat talks about sovereign risk. Now, the comments that Bill Shorten made to Jeff Cousins, which were, Jeff Cousins had the interview here on the ABC, where he said that Bill Shorten told him he would revoke Adani's licence. Now, put aside that it's Adani or whatever it is, just think about what that does to sovereign risk in this nation. Who is going to put their capital up and invest, hundreds of millions of dollars that are needed to get all the environmental approvals, tick every box, jump every hurdle, only to have the fear or a threat that a Bill Shorten-led government will revoke your licence if you've done anything right? That is a real sovereign risk to this nation, and that threatens our prosperity, it threatens job growth, it threatens the economy.
Pat, were those comments made?
I wasn't in that conversation. What I can say is we've released a statement clearly stating that we will follow the laws of the land, we will not rip up contracts, we will not drive sovereign risk. We'll be governed by the EPBC Act and everything that goes with that. So we've been very clear with that. Only as recently as a year ago, Craig and others in the coalition were talking about abolishing the renewable energy target and undermining investments already made. So it's a bit rich to start talking about we're driving sovereign risk when they were contemplating an attack on an entire industry. So I think that's a bit rich. But let's look at our statements. Our statements are we'll follow the laws of the land. In government, we will act according to the laws and the national interest and assess any new information as it comes. If any new information comes through, but let's be very clear. I won't cop all these Liberals saying they're the best friends of coal miners. I don't see them on picket lines defending coal miners' wages. I don't see them at miners' memorials commemorating the 1,800 coal miners who've died in my community over 200 years. This is all high-vis hypocrisy, quite frankly. They're the coal miners' best friend when they think they can wedge Labor, but they're nowhere to be seen defending penalty rates or supporting well-paying jobs in my community.
We are not running up policies that tries to close the coal mines and coal-fired power stations down in this nation.
All right, Craig Kelly, Pat Conroy, thanks very much.
Thanks for coming.
Our pleasure.